Good evening, namaskar, adab, welcome as always to your favorite news destination. The year is slowly coming to an end, and I can see on all practical fronts, people are getting into celebratory mode. People want to enjoy, there are parties that are going on. We've just come off a hectic marriage season, and now you're entering pre-Christmas festivities, pre-New Year's Eve celebrations, grand parties being planned. But folks, here's a realistic scenario. Here's a reality check which you must be aware of before you start thinking in terms of leaving your places or thinking in terms of going to a hotel and having a nice time with your friends. The Omicron variant is spreading. It's spreading, and it's spreading rapidly in our very own country. I leave it up to you to decide whether you think we have the requisite infrastructure to deal with the aftershocks of yet another spread of this pandemic. We've gone through 2 rounds. There was the first variant, then we went through the Delta variant, and there was all hell had broken loose. The US President Joe Biden now is warning a winter of death for the unvaccinated in the United States of America. In India, though, while the numbers of this Omicron variant have still not grown substantially, but the percentage of people, the number of people who are being impacted from 57 till just a few hours back now, it's gone up to 100. States which are being affected now increasing. Look at that. It's pretty much all states from Maharashtra to Delhi to Karnataka to Tamil Nadu to Telangana, all the way to West Bengal, Rajasthan, Gujarat. No Indian state today, hardly any, I mean maybe barring the Northeast if you look at it, has been left untouched by this Omicron variant. So while we get into this festivity mode, we need to be aware that despite all various medical opinions which have been given to us that it's a virus which spreads rapidly but is not as lethal, it may be in your systems but does not force or does not lead us to hospitalization or any serious health complications. My simple point is this, folks, we can't let a scenario where this Omicron variant ends up becoming a challenge for us, because if it happens, it will not be a good story. I don't think India as a society, as an economy, can deal with the aftershocks of yet another variant. What's being stated by Dr. Love Agarwal and the chief of the anti-COVID task force, Dr. V.K. Paul. Let's just play the responses for you.
पिछले 20 दिनों से देश में जो डेली नए केस रिपोर्ट हो रहे हैं उसकी संख्या 10,000 से कम है, लेकिन ओमिक्रॉन के परिप्रेक्ष्य में, साथ ही इस परिप्रेक्ष्य में कि पूरे विश्व में केसेस काफी अधिक संख्या में नोट किए जा रहे हैं, जरूरी है कि हम कंटिन्यूड बेसिस पर अपना विजिलेंस को बनाए रखें। 40% एक्टिव केसेस देश के अभी केरला स्टेट में है, 12% के करीब केसेस महाराष्ट्र में है, और वेस्ट बंगाल, तमिलनाडु और कर्नाटका, यह 3 स्टेट ऐसी हैं जहां पर कि 5,000 से अधिक एक्टिव केसेस अभी नोट किए जा रहे हैं। 11 स्टेट में टोटल 101 ओमिक्रॉन केसेस अब तक डिटेक्ट हुए हैं। इस संख्या में ऑन ए डेली बेसिस देश में ट्रैक किया जाता है। महाराष्ट्र में 32 केस, दिल्ली में 22 केस, राजस्थान, कर्नाटका, तेलंगाना, ऐसे करते हुए करीब 11 स्टेट्स में 101 केस अब तक नोट किए जा चुके हैं।
साइक्लोन जैसा एक नंबर बड़े हैं यूरोप में, वो स्टीप राइज आपने आपको दिखाया स्पेसिफिक कंट्रीज का। इट्स नॉट ओनली साउथ अफ्रीका, इट्स नॉट ओनली बोत्सवाना, इट्स नॉट ओनली जिम्बाब्वे। समथिंग, a new phase of pandemic is being experienced in Europe, which is something that we have always been watching for. The government's R&D system has intensified genomic surveillance. और ओमिक्रॉन में एक खास बात यह है कि अब जीनोमिक ही हो जाता तभी पता चलता, उससे पहले उसके चेहरे पे लिखा ही नहीं है कि इस इन्फेक्शन जो RT-PCR में आई है उसमें इसका मतलब है डिले भी होती है, पता चलने में भी देर रहेगी। जब तक पिक्चर सामने आएगी कहीं कुछ हो चुका होगा, वो यहाँ का है, वो यहाँ जाके दिखाई देता है। Tremendous effort has been made, systematic effort has been made, the collective alertness और सारा जैसे आपको बताया गया किस तरह से ये सारा कोऑर्डिनेट हो रहा है, whole of government effort, whole of nation effort.
Winter of death being projected by the US President. So a stern warning for the unvaccinated. In India, the problem being a problem of plenty, the problem that we are letting our guard down. How are we going to deal with this scenario? 4 top medical aces joining us tonight. Dr. Ashok Seth, one of the foremost medical voices in the country, Chairman Fortis Escorts Heart Institute. Dr. Ankit Baidia, infectious diseases physician, Dr. Sameer Gupta from the Metro Group of Hospitals joining us live, and Dr. Venkat Rao from the Sam Hospital joining us live as well. Good evening and welcome to all of you. Dr. Seth, let me begin with you, sir, first, and let me ask you to respond to this situation. How bad is the situation? Straight up, sir. What are we looking at this stage? Dr. Seth.
We used to call Delta as a tsunami. Now imagine it's just been 3 weeks since the first Omicron case was reported from South Africa. It's already overwhelming for Europe and UK for the moment. 1,100, more than 11,000 cases of Omicron yesterday. It's added on to the whole wave, which is the largest surge coming in Europe and UK like never before. This is the maximum number of cases happening. They're going backwards in time. It is so vicious that its doubling has gone down from 3 to 2 days. So when you look at all what's happening within 3 weeks, 77 countries, we've got to understand that it's only inevitable that a third wave is going to happen in India, because we actually have the biggest nidus for infection. We are a country which is overpopulated, large number of people in a small area, one of the most congested countries. Yes, our COVID norms have actually gone away in a multiple ways when you see the groups and the crowds without masks and actually having a party. But that's why we are seeing that also happen, by the way, in Europe and in the UK, because there the rules and regulations of masks had gone away. And that is why we're seeing this annihilation. The problem of India is that if this virus is, and it's inevitable, it's going to happen, let's not take solace from the fact that it's got a mild illness, only few will get a flu-like illness. Just the scale of it is going to be so huge that even if a small proportion of the people got serious and went to the hospital or got admitted to the hospital or required more intensive treatment, that volume would be used. And by the way,
but where do you stand?
The severity of infection, by the way, just one more fact. The severity of infection relies on the host response, on the host immunity. And by the way, we have loads of population which have either lost their immunity because of being elderly or immunosuppressed, or even haven't even been vaccinated. So actually, at the end of the day, we are at a grave risk, and we better take it seriously. It's just around the corner that we're actually going to see a third wave. Let's pray that it's not serious.
Dr. Seth, tell me one thing. Yeah. You know, I've had professors from IITs joining us on this program. I've spoken to top experts. There are two different opinions, sir, which I've heard. One is that the third wave is going to hit us in the month of December. One is it's going to be a very, very mild wave, and we actually may not even realize that the wave has come and it is gone, and it will happen in February. How do you respond to both these scenarios, sir?
See, I don't think any of us can pretend to be very intelligent about this virus. Let's take it for granted.
Correct, sir.
We've neither foreseen it in the past. We've always followed the virus, never got ahead of it. So let's not be so intelligent enough to be able to predict everything which is going to happen ahead. The fact that somebody says that it's a mild illness, let's pray that it's a mild illness. But if you notice that what finally does happen is that 4 to 6 weeks is when you start realizing the severity of any illnesses and the number of people who would require hospital admission. And let us hope that what the reports coming from South Africa are correct. But that's not what the UK is seeing at the moment. UK is seeing the rise in hospital admissions. It's certainly not seeing the deaths at the moment, but you also know that the deaths follow another 4 weeks of a lag period. So I think more information is going to come. We can only pray that it is mild. But let's be prepared for the worst, because yes, there are immunosuppressed people.
Sure.
There are people who have lost their immunities. There are elderlies also, and there are those who got single vaccination doses. And we already know there are two facts we know about the virus. One, that it is highly infectious than ever seen before. Secondly, that it bypasses immunity of the vaccination as well as innate immunity. What we don't know is the severity. Let's not sound so intelligent.
So let's not sound intelligent. Let's not get ahead of the game. All right, let's take that. Dr. Sameer Gupta, now that Dr. Ashok Seth has laid the foundation very clearly, let's not try and be too intelligent. Let's not try and predict it will happen in December or it will happen in February. If I just look at numbers, in the UK, the overall number of people who've been infected now stands at 40%. So obviously this variant is spreading very, very fast. What do we do in India, sir, at this stage?
I would agree with everything Dr. Seth said. There's a lot we know, and there's a lot more we don't know. I would just like to add one more point. There is, when you look at the UK and parts of Europe and even in South Africa, there's a lot of hospitalizations that is happening, and it's happening at a very high rate. There is some data which has come out that Omicron is sending people to the hospital earlier as compared to the Delta variant. So the Delta variant was sending people on an average to the hospital on the 9th to 10th day, and Omicron is sending people to the hospital at the 6th day mark. Does that have anything to do with the severity of the virus? Well, that is to be determined, like Dr. Seth said. We have to wait 3 to 4 weeks. And 40% of the people are getting infected, and that's huge, right? This number is huge. I'd say I cannot emphasize the importance of trying to go back to the COVID norms, pulling ourselves back. I know the economy is just open, people are going out, the wedding season, now the holiday season, we had also planned some travel here and there. But I think all of that, as of today, now has to come to a full stop. But we have to realize that health is more important.
But we're not getting, we're not getting it. Dr. Gupta, my fear is, and I want to bring in Dr. Ankita Baidya onto this one. My fear is, Dr. Baidya, we're going back to where we were, in the Delta variant scenario. You remember at that time, the West Bengal elections were staring at us in our face, and whatever happened, we were just unwilling. We had a Bihar election, we had a West Bengal election, all happened during COVID times. Now, there is the Omicron threat, and you're looking at UP, Punjab, Uttarakhand, Goa, again critical states which are going to polls. January onwards, campaigning will pick up. By the time you reach February, the election schedule would be out. People will be up and about. Are we really looking at a dangerous scenario here in India, Dr. Baidya?
Yes, absolutely, Bhupendra. If we see, we have to learn from the past, whatever mistakes have been made in the past. So the second wave was a dreadful scenario that everybody had gone through. Now, as we see the UK scenario, that we see that Omicron is almost 70% more infectious if we compare it with the Delta variant. So, and seeing the Indian case scenario also, the cases are rising. Almost 11 states are now infected and have reported the Omicron strain. And also, as Dr. Seth also mentioned, the RT-PCR is not the test that can detect that you are having Omicron infection. So just limiting all these things and taking into account all these things, it must be noticed by the government that such campaigning should not happen. We don't want to see any third wave right now. After seeing the second wave, the preparedness, if we see there are reports of pediatric populations also getting affected abroad. So if we see this, we don't know exactly how the pediatric population is being catered in our country right now. The pediatric ICUs are not ready up to the mark. If the numbers actually raise to the numbers, if we see the 130 crore of Indian population is there, and the rate the Omicron virus spread, and if it spreads, even if the most of the numbers are mild infections, and a minority also, if it is the people who require hospitalization, in that case also, the numbers will be so huge that the admissions in hospitals could be a difficult situation, and the healthcare facilities might not.
Well, Dr. Rao, are we already looking at this? This I must admit, Dr. Venkat Rao, this is the first time, sir, that I'm now seeing the needle of concern certainly has moved. We've done a lot of programming here, and we've got top doctors from across the country. When I'm listening to all the three experts today, all three top doctors, I'm getting a sense that something is happening. Am I overreacting to the scenario, or is something staring at us in our faces and we are not willing to acknowledge it?
In a single sentence, if I put it, there is a thin line of demarcation between panic and preparedness. This is not only applicable to you, to me, or to the general public, to the whole world, because we are all human beings, and we are not able to differentiate between the panic and the preparedness. Now, what is happening, I would fully agree with all the three experts, whatever they have told. Absolutely right. But two more perspectives I would like to put it through. When in the first wave, the Omicron virus, coronavirus was there in other countries, and the first wave was delayed in India, we were of the opinion that Indian population is different. BCG vaccination, because tuberculosis and all those issues, measles vaccination, dengue, all these infections were prevalent in our country.
Yeah, we were declaring victory. We were declaring victory in December, of December of 2020, that all was well.
Absolutely. If we were, thinking about that, at the same time, now we have to think that if Omicron is spreading so fast, and in South Africa, if it is very safe virus, do you expect that the Indian population also will be safe? Then it will be it will be a fourth.
But then I'm not understanding, as I hold all of you for a moment, as I slip into a short break and we'll come back, I'm not understanding if the situation is so serious. And make no mistake about it, folks, from Dr. Seth to Dr. Beda to Dr. Gupta to Dr. Rao, what is being stated today on India Ahead is that the needle of feeling safe, that this Omicron variant is not a major threat to us. I think that question is getting very clear answers tonight, that Omicron variant is indeed a major threat to us and we jolly well be prepared to face that threat. What should we be doing? Is booster dose the answer? Why is there this delay in booster dose? Look at that question on the other side of the short break. The question of booster dose. Dr. Seth, what do you make out of this, sir? The World Health Organization now is singing a very different line as far as the efficacy of existing COVID vaccines against Omicron variant is concerned. We just had Dr. V.K. Paul the other day saying that you may need to tweak the existing nature of vaccines if you have to deal with this Omicron variant. What do you make out of that situation, sir?
So let me just be very clear about the booster dosing. Firstly, of course, I trust our experts and their advice on the booster dosing for the country, because it's a fine balance of equity, fine balance of availability. But there's no question on taking sides on the booster. One thing is very clear in science, that boosters are going to be needed. The issue is when. And the issue is, when is the availability versus equity the right time? I'm going to really emphasizing the point that a roadmap has to be created for booster. We know exactly how many vaccines we have, how many vaccines we're giving. Our focus is second dose, that's correct. But believe you me, it's been clearly shown that boosters are going to be needed. Boosters actually increase immunity. Boosters are now getting very important for this variant. And there's no point saying, let's wait for our data 2 months down the road.
Why the delay? Why the delay? Dr. Said, why do you think there's a delay in India?
I won't be able to answer, but I would certainly suggest that a roadmap is needed, because there are three groups which are very important straight away. Firstly, of course, we need to understand that we don't call it a booster, but the third dose is needed for those who had transplants, those who are immunosuppressed, because they haven't even mounted an immunity. Secondly, both elderly and the healthcare workers, by the way, the healthcare workers who are going to be the front line in the battle which lies ahead, and by the way, it is lying ahead just around the corner, is going to be very valid, because 8 to 10 months have gone and the immunity of the doctors, the healthcare workers is decreasing, and it's time for them to have a booster, because even now, UK is worried that a major proportion of its healthcare workers are going to be affected and going off sick. And who's going to look after the increased number of patients who are getting admitted? That was the statement of the UK's chief medical officer.
Exactly.
And finally,
Dr. Said,
finally, the elderly need to be given a booster.
Sir, but I'm at a loss, because you're being absolutely clear of what needs to be done. I'm just trying to understand. There is your clarity of thought. There is V.K. Paul, who's making it very clear that the existing vaccines may not be good enough to deal with this Omicron variant, and yet we're debating when we should have this booster dose. What could be the biggest challenge for the Indian establishment not to be in a position to make up its mind whether you need it or not?
I can't answer that, and I'm just urging them to create a roadmap. What we want to see is a roadmap. We know exactly how many doses are available. I also hear that doses are not being used as much as we want, as much as we would like the double dosing to happen as fast as possible. And if they're not going to be used, then they might as well get used for the boosters. So yes, a roadmap, How many boosters? When it has to come. I don't mind somebody telling me it's down a month. We'll consider it a month later. We need a plan for booster, just like we created a plan for double vaccination. We know vaccines are there. We know how many vaccines are there. And we know the country requires boosters. Let's decide on a roadmap.
Well,
that's all I would say.
Well, I can tell you that in response to an RTI plea which was filed before the health ministry today, you now have data which shows how much money is actually being spent by the government of India when it comes to dealing with these various vaccines, from Covaxin to Covishield. What is the amount of money which is being spent by the Indian Council for Medical Research? This is the RTI reply that ICMR has invested close to 55 crores for development and clinical trials of Covaxin, Covishield and Covovax. Dr. Baidia, if only 55 crores has been spent by ICMR, and maybe there is more money which has been spent by the health ministry or other parts of the Indian political establishment, why do you think, what could be the logic that we are still not clear as a government, as a polity, whether you required booster shots or not?
So first part I want to answer that why we are not clear. So if we see the current status of double vaccinated individuals in our country, it is less than 50%, though more than 100 crores vaccine doses have been given, but actual numbers of complete vaccinated population is less than 50%, somewhere close to around 30% it is. So, and recent study from UK have shown that the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, that is mRNA vaccine targeting the spike protein, both doses, the people who have received were able to neutralize only 40%, up to 40% extent to this Omicron variant. But on receiving the booster dose, it was around 80%. So 40% is definitely better than zero. That at least two doses has to be given. So we have to look into the logistics also. So right now, if we see majority of the population is not completely vaccinated, yes, the frontline workers and the healthcare workers have to be considered because they got vaccine dose, the first dose in the month of January, February, initially when the program started, and they should be considered because they will be topmost who are going to be affected also more early because now they are dealing in the healthcare.
This is becoming a very, very complicated, complex scenario, Dr. Sameer Gupta. On one hand, the overall percentage of people in India who've been double vaccinated is, well, still lesser, double vaccinated. On the other, we're saying that there are vaccines which are available. So therefore, it's not a question of supply. Maybe it's a question of intent. And we're looking at what's happening in America. Then to top it all, we're saying that if you have to deal with Omicron, you need maybe a different vaccine, maybe some tweaking of the vaccine. What is the way forward? What do you think India really needs to be doing over the next 3 months?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we need to have, like my previous speakers have said, we need to have a roadmap, right? Now, if you look at how respiratory infections go, if you look at the flu, every year you get a flu vaccine, right? Every year you get a flu vaccine which contains all the relevant strains which are currently causing infection. In the future, this is how COVID is going to be. Right? Every year you will have to take a COVID vaccine, which is going to have the most relevant strains which are currently circulating right now. So that is what is going to happen as we go forward. I completely agree with you that right now there are so many people who've not gotten the second dose also. In fact, even in our hospitals and in other medical hospitals, the vaccination rate has dropped so much that they are saying that we have vaccines lying, but nobody's coming to get it. So it may not be a bad idea for us to start offering the booster vaccines. The other day, I was also reading that the Serum Institute is cutting down its production. So, we don't want to be in a stage where we now need boosters. Now you suddenly need 100 crore more vaccines. The production has stopped. So we are back to what we were in May and June, where people were not able to get the vaccine because of lack of production. So we need to act fast. We need to be quick, and we need to be efficient.
Okay. Well, let's just hope, as I thank all of you for joining us on the show tonight, let's just hope that this roadmap that all of you are asking for is a roadmap which comes in sooner than later. It's a roadmap which should be depended upon by the authorities to ensure that we don't come out sleeping. No question. I don't think there's any scope of trying to play catch up with the developing story, with this evolving scenario. If we know that we're staring at this Omicron variant, we need to go all out, folks. We need to ensure, whether it's on the electoral front, political front, personal front, domestic front, party front, whatever front, we need to ensure that we are in control of our own selves. You drop your guard down, don't keep your sanitizer with you, don't mask up. If you don't get vaccinated, you're playing with fire, you're playing with your own life. Don't do that. India cannot afford that. Your family members can't afford that. Still, we go to a short break. When we come back, our next big story.